The stars looked wrong through the cracked viewport. Taeyang pressed his face against the cold glass, trying to understand what had happened. One moment, he was checking the cargo seals on the Sejong's Promise, and the next, the entire ship screamed with alarms. The lights went red. The floor shook so hard his teeth rattled. All hands, brace for impact. Captain Morris's voice crackled through the speakers, but the words cut off halfway. Then came the worst sound Taeyang had ever heard, the deep groan of metal tearing apart. He ran toward the main corridor, but the gravity lurched sideways. His feet left the floor. Emergency panels burst open along the walls, and escape pods shot out like seeds from a dying flower. Taeyang grabbed for a handhold, missed, and slammed into the cargo bay door. Pain exploded in his shoulder. The automatic systems didn't care about pain. Metal arms reached out from the wall and grabbed him, dragging him into the nearest pod. He fought against them, screaming for his sister Hana, for anyone. But the pod door sealed shut with a hiss. Through the small window, he saw the Sejong's Promise breaking into pieces, each section drifting in different directions. Some pods fired toward the nearest planet. His pods spun the other way. Taeyang hammered on the controls, but nothing responded. The pod had launched wrong, damaged by the same thing that killed the ship. He could only watch as the other pods became tiny dots of light, then disappeared completely. The navigation screen flickered and died. Life support worked. Barely. He had air, water, and emergency rations. But he was alone in the dark, moving fast toward empty space. 3 days passed like 3 years. Taeyang slept when exhaustion forced him. He ate protein bars that tasted like cardboard. He talked to himself because the silence made him feel like he was already dead. The pod had no entertainment systems, no books, nothing but him and his thoughts. On the 3rd day, something changed. The pod started shaking. At first, Taeyang thought it was breaking apart, but then he saw it through the viewport, a moon, huge and red, filling his entire view. The pod's broken autopilot had brought him somewhere after all. The entry was rough. Fire covered the viewport. The temperature inside rose until sweat poured down his face. Taeyang strapped himself tight and prayed to gods he wasn't sure he believed in. The pod hit something hard, bounced, hit again, and finally rolled to a stop. For a long moment, Taeyang just breathed. He was alive. The door release worked on the 3rd try, and he fell out onto red dirt that looked like dried blood. His legs shook as he stood. Everything hurt, but he was standing on solid ground, breathing air that smelled like sulfur and hot metal. The sky above was wrong, crimson, red, with black clouds rolling past like angry rivers. Mountains rose in the distance, tall and sharp, with lava glowing between their peaks. The gravity pulled at him harder than Earth, harder than any colony he'd visited. Each step felt like wearing lead boots. Taeyang activated his emergency beacon with trembling fingers. It blinked, green working, sending his location into space. Someone would find him. Hana would find him. She never gave up on anything, especially not her little brother. He just had to stay alive until rescue came. He gathered what he could from the pod. Water recycler, medical kit, protein bars, thermal blanket, and a small toolkit. The pod itself was dying. Systems failing one by one. He needed to find shelter before dark, assuming this place had a dark. That's when he heard it. A sound like thunder, but regular, rhythmic. Footsteps. Big. Footsteps. Taeyang turned and felt his heart stop. They came over the ridge like something from a nightmare. Tall didn't describe them, they were massive, easily 8 or 9 feet high. Some even bigger. Their bodies were covered in scales that caught the red light and threw it back like polished metal. Wings folded against their backs, huge and powerful. Their faces were long, reptilian, with eyes that glowed like burning coals. Dragons. Not the fairy tale kind, but something real and terrifying. There were 6 of them, armored in black metal that matched their scales. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. They moved like soldiers, spreading out to surround him. Taeyang backed against his pod, holding his pathetic toolkit like a weapon. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The largest one stepped forward. Its scales were dark bronze, almost black, and scars crossed its face and arms. It looked down at Taeyang, the way a human might look at an interesting bug. Then it spoke, and the words sounded like rocks grinding together. Taeyang didn't understand a single sound. He raised his hands slowly, hoping the gesture meant the same thing here. "I'm not a threat," he said, knowing they couldn't understand either. "My ship crashed. I'm lost. Please don't kill me." The bronze dragon tilted its head. It reached out with one clawed hand, and Taeyang squeezed his eyes shut, certain this was the end. But instead of pain, he felt something cold touch his neck. When he opened his eyes, the dragon was attaching a small device to his collar. It clicked into place. "Test," the dragon said, and this time Taeyang understood. The device was translating. "You understand now?" "Yes," Taeyang whispered. "Yes, I understand." "Good." The bronze dragon straightened. "You are trespassing on sacred ground. The punishment is death." It said this calmly, like discussing the weather. Taeyang's legs nearly gave out. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. My ship crashed. I'm just trying to survive." Ignorance changes nothing. This is Dracor Prime, the spawning ground, the heart of our people. No outsider walks here and lives. The dragon turned to its companions. "Bring him to Warlord Vexthar. He will decide." 2 dragons grabbed Taeyang's arms. Their grip was strong enough to bruise even through his suit. They lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. One of them collected his meager supplies, while another examined the crashed pod. They carried him across the red landscape. The journey took hours. Taeyang saw wonders and terrors, pools of lava that lit the ground from below, creatures that looked like 6-legged wolves hunting in packs, and in the distance, a city of black stone built into the mountains themselves. The fortress appeared as they climbed. It was carved from the mountain itself. All sharp angles and defensive walls. Banners flew from the towers, marked with symbols Taeyang didn't recognize. Dragons walked the walls, dozens of them, all armed and watchful. They brought him to a great hall. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above. Fire burned in channels cut into the floor, giving everything an orange glow. At the far end, on a throne of black stone, sat the largest dragon Taeyang had seen yet. This one had silver scales that looked like mercury, flowing and catching the light. Scars covered his body. Each one, a story of survival. His wings spread wide, each one larger than Taeyang's entire pod. But it was his eyes that made Taeyang's breath catch molten gold, ancient and intelligent, studying him with an intensity that felt like being weighed and measured. "Warlord Vexthar," the bronze dragon said, bowing. "We found this creature near Sector 7. It came from the sky in a metal shell. It carries no weapons of worth and speaks a language unknown to us. I have given it a translator." Vexithar rose from his throne. Each movement was controlled, powerful. He descended the steps slowly, his claws clicking on stone. He walked around Taeyang in a circle, looking at him from every angle. Taeyang forced himself to stand straight, despite his fear. "Human," Vexthar said finally. His voice was deep, rumbling like distant thunder. "I have heard of your kind. Soft, weak, short-lived. You spread across stars like weeds, but you break so easily." "We're tougher than we look," Taeyang said, surprising himself with his own voice. Vexthar's eyes narrowed. Then, impossibly, he laughed. It sounded like rocks falling. "Perhaps. Rakthul, you say he trespassed on sacred ground?" "Yes, warlord. He should be executed, according to law." Vexthar walked closer, until he stood directly in front of Taeyang. One clawed hand reached out, and a single talon lifted Taeyang's chin. The warlord studied his face for a long moment. Something flickered in those golden eyes, memory, perhaps, or recognition of something lost. "No," Vexthar said quietly. Then louder, so the entire hall could hear. The other dragons stirred, confused. Rakthul stepped forward. "Warlord, the law. I invoke the right of claiming," Vexthar interrupted. "This human is under my protection, mine to guard, mine to teach, mine to judge. Does anyone challenge this?" Silence filled the hall. No one moved. No one spoke. Vexthar looked down at Taeyang again. "You wanted to survive, human. Now you will. Come." He turned and walked away, clearly expecting Taeyang to follow. The young human looked at the other dragons, at their weapons, and their hostile eyes. Then he looked at Vexthar's retreating form. He didn't understand what just happened, didn't know what claiming meant, didn't know if he was prisoner or guest, but he was alive. For now, that was enough. Taeyang followed the silver dragon deeper into the fortress, into an unknown future, wondering if rescue would come before he learned what being claimed really meant. Taeyang's room was bigger than his family's entire apartment back on Earth. The walls were carved stone, smooth and dark, with patterns that might have been writing or decoration. A large window opened to the crimson sky. No glass to block the hot wind that smelled of ash. The bed was a raised stone platform, covered in something that looked like fur, but felt too warm, too alive. Everything in the room was built for someone 3 times his size. He sat on the edge of the too big bed and tried not to panic. The door had no lock that he could see, but he suspected it wouldn't open if he tried. Guards stood outside. He'd heard their heavy footsteps and the scrape of their claws on stone. He was alive, but he was definitely a prisoner. Food came at irregular intervals, brought by smaller dragons who wouldn't meet his eyes. The food itself was strange, some kind of meat that was too tough, vegetables that tasted like metal, and a thick drink that gave him energy but made his teeth tingle. He ate because starving wouldn't help him escape. On the 3rd day, a different dragon came to his room. This one was smaller than the warriors, maybe 7 feet tall, with copper-colored scales that shimmered when she moved. Her eyes were bright green instead of gold or red. She walked with a grace the soldiers lacked. "Hello, human," she said through his translator. Her voice was smoother, easier to hear. "I am Velmora. Warlord Vexthar has ordered me to teach you our language and explain your situation." Taeyang stood quickly. "Can you tell me why I'm here? What does claimed mean? When can I leave?" Velmora sat down on the floor, folding her legs beneath her. After a moment, Taeyang sat across from her. "So many questions. That is good. Curiosity means you wish to understand." She paused, choosing words carefully. "You committed the greatest crime possible in our culture. You walked on Drakor Prime, our sacred spawning ground. Only Draketh are permitted here. The punishment is always death." Taeyang's hands clenched. "I didn't know. My pod crashed. I didn't choose to come here." "I believe you," Velmora said gently. "But our law does not care about intention. Only action. However, there is one exception. The right of claiming. When a warrior declares another being as their ward, that being becomes untouchable. They belong to the warrior completely, under their protection and authority." "So I'm a slave?" "No, not exactly." Velmora's tail swished across the floor. "It is complicated. A claimed being is family, property, student, and responsibility all at once. Vexthar is responsible for everything you do. If you harm someone, he faces the consequences. If someone harms you, they face his wrath." Taeyang processed this slowly. "Why would he do that? He doesn't know me. I'm nothing to him." Velmora's eyes grew sad. 20 cycles ago, Warlord Vexthar had a son, Kirsan. He was brave, strong, everything a father could want. When the Reaver swarms attacked our outer colonies, Kir-san led the defense. He saved 3 worlds before his ship was destroyed. Vex Thar recovered the body himself. I'm sorry, Taeyong said quietly, but I still don't understand. You are the same age Kir-san would be now. You came from the sky, lost and alone. When Vexthar looks at you, he sees a chance to guard something again, to teach again, to have purpose beyond war. Velmora leaned forward. He will never say this to you. Pride would not allow it. But I know him. He claimed you because he needs you as much as you need him. Taeyong didn't know what to say to that. Before he could respond, alarms shrieked through the fortress. Velmora's head snapped up. Eruption warning. We must go to the shelter. What? But Velmora was already moving toward the door. Taeyong ran after her, following her through corridors filled with running dragons. They burst outside onto a courtyard just as the mountain above them exploded. Lava shot into the sky like a fountain. The ground shook hard enough to knock Taeyong off his feet. Dragons took flight, powerful wings carrying them away from danger. But near the fortress wall, Taeyong saw 3 small figures stumbling in the wrong direction. Baby dragons, no bigger than large dogs, their wings too small to carry them yet. They ran toward the cliff edge, scared and confused by the chaos. Without thinking, Taeyong ran toward them. The heat from the lava made his eyes water. Smoke choked his lungs. He reached the first baby dragon and grabbed it around the middle. It squealed and tried to bite him, but he held on. Velmora! Help! She landed beside him, scooping up the other 2 hatchlings. This way! Quickly! They ran as lava flowed down the mountain. Taeyong's legs burned from the effort. The gravity pulled at him like hands trying to drag him down, but he didn't let go of the squirming baby dragon in his arms. They made it to a tunnel entrance just as burning rock poured across where they'd been standing. Inside the shelter, Velmora took the hatchlings from him. Other dragons rushed forward, mothers reclaiming their children. Taeyong collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. His hands were burned from touching the hot scales. His lungs felt full of ash. A shadow fell over him. He looked up to see Vexthar standing there, backlit by the emergency lights. The warlord's expression was unreadable. That was foolish, Vexthar said. You could have died. They were just babies. Taeyong managed between coughs. I couldn't leave them. Vexthar studied him for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down on the floor beside Taeyong, making himself smaller. The gravity here is 1.3 times what you are used to. The air has less oxygen. You are weaker than the smallest hatchling, yet you ran toward danger to save children not your own. He paused. Kir-san would have done the same. Madamente. It was the first time Vexthar had mentioned his son to Taeyong directly. The young human didn't know how to respond, so he said nothing. Over the following weeks, things changed. Vexthar visited Taeyong's room every day. At first, they sat in silence, while Vexthar worked on reports and battle plans. Then he started explaining what he was doing. He showed Taeyong holographic star maps, pointing out Draketh territory, human space, and the vast unknown regions between. Your people are young, Vexthar said one evening, manipulating the star map with his claws. You have been in space for barely 300 of your years. We have sailed the dark for 20,000 cycles. Yet you spread faster than any species I have known. Why? Why? Taeyong thought about it. Because we have to. Earth was dying when we left it. We don't have the luxury of going slow. Every new world is a chance for humanity to survive a little longer. Desperation as motivation. Vexthar's tail curled. We dragons were born strong. We never faced extinction. Perhaps that makes us complacent. You're fighting the Reavers, Taeyong pointed out. That's not complacent. The Reavers are machines, not worthy opponents. They have no honor, no culture, only consumption. Vexthar closed the star map. Tell me about your sister. The question surprised him. Hana? She's a captain in the expeditionary fleet. Stubborn as hell. She practically raised me after our parents died in the Mars colony collapse. Taeyang smiled despite himself. She's probably out there right now, refusing to believe I'm dead. She'll find me eventually. She sounds formidable. I would like to meet her someday. She'd probably try to punch you for kidnapping me. Vexthar's laugh rumbled like thunder. I would welcome the attempt. Velmora continued teaching Taeyang the Draketh language. He learned that their words had different meanings depending on the tone and the position of the speaker's tale. He learned about their history, how they evolved on a world of volcanoes and predators, how they conquered the stars through strength and unity. He also learned about the political situation. Not everyone agreed with Vexthar's decision to claim him. A faction led by Counselor Rakthul believed humans were inferior, dangerous, and should be driven from this region of space before they spread further. The news that a human walked freely on Drakor Prime made this faction furious. There will be a challenge soon, Velmora warned him. Rakthul will demand the High Council review Vexthar's claim. He will argue that tradition must be upheld, that you should be executed regardless of the claiming. Can they do that? If enough council members agree, yes, the right of claiming can be overruled in cases of extreme sacred violation. She looked worried. You need to prove your worth. Show them that humans deserve respect. But how could he prove anything? He was small, weak, and knew almost nothing about Draketh culture. What could a human possibly offer to a civilization that had mastered the stars for 20,000 years? The answer came to him while watching Velmora repair a damaged power core. The Draketh technology was advanced but inefficient. They had grown so powerful they never needed to optimize, never needed to do more with less. Humans were the opposite. Every resource mattered when you were fighting to survive. Velmora, he said slowly, can you get me access to your engineering databases? She looked at him suspiciously. Why? Because I think I can help. I think I can show the High Council why humans matter. 2 weeks later, Taeyang stood in front of the High Council with a device he'd built from spare parts and human principles. Vexthar stood beside him, silent but supportive. Rakthul sat at the head of the council table, his dark red scales gleaming with satisfaction. He was sure this human would fail. Proceed, Rakthul said dismissively. Taeyang activated his device. A small fusion reactor, no bigger than his backpack, hummed to life. The power readings appeared on the holographic display. The council members leaned forward, their eyes widening. This reactor produces 30% more energy than your current designs of the same size, Taeyang explained. It uses a magnetic confinement pattern based on mathematical principles humans developed during our early space age. We had to make our technology efficient because we had limited resources. Your technology is powerful, but wasteful. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some council members looked impressed. Others looked offended. Rakthul's expression darkened. Trickery, he hissed. Any species can stumble upon one clever design. Maybe. Taeyang agreed. But this isn't about one design. It's about approach. You say humans are weak. You're right. We are. We have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. On Earth, everything tried to kill us. So we learned to adapt, to innovate, to turn our weakness into strength. We made tools. We made fire. We made ships that cross stars. You were born powerful. We had to earn every bit of strength we have. 2. He met Rakthul's eyes directly. That makes us different, not lesser. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then, Vexthar stepped forward. The human speaks truth. I claimed him because I saw value. Now you see it too. The question before this council is simple. Do we remain locked in old ways? Or do we acknowledge that strength comes in many forms? The council voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Taeyang's claim was upheld. More than that, the council agreed to allow limited human contact with Dracoth space for trade and cultural exchange. That night, Vex Thar brought Taeyang to the highest tower of the fortress. They looked out over the red landscape together, at the lava flows and the crimson sky. "You did well today," Vex Thar said. "Kirsan would have been proud." "I'm not your son," Taeyang said gently. "No. You are not." Vex Thar's tail curled around himself. "But you are mine nonetheless. And I find that is enough." Somewhere in space, Taeyang knew his sister was looking for him. But standing there beside the dragon warlord who had claimed him, watching alien stars wheel overhead, Taeyang realized he was in no hurry to leave. He had found something unexpected here. Not a prison, not servitude, but something closer to family. Part 3. Humanity Fights Back. Hana stood on the bridge of her ship, the Time's defiant light asterisk, staring at the star map with red eyes. She hadn't slept properly in 6 weeks. Coffee stopped working 3 days ago, replaced by stims that made her hands shake but kept her mind sharp. The crew worried about her. She knew. They were right to worry. "Captain," her pilot Doyun said carefully, "we're approaching the edge of charted space. The outer veil begins in 20,000 kilometers. After that, we're flying blind." "Good," Hana said flatly. "That's where his pod beacon was headed before we lost signal." Her engineer Kyung looked up from his console. "Captain, the Terran Coalition has ordered us to return 3 times now. If we cross into uncharted space without authorization, that's a court-martial offense. Then I'll face court-martial when we get back. With my brother." Hana's jaw tightened. "Anyone who wants to turn back can take a shuttle and go. I won't stop you, but I'm finding Taeyang." No one moved toward the shuttle bay. Combat Specialist Ji-Wan actually smiled. "We're with you, Captain. All the way. Then let's go find my little brother." The Time's defiant light times crossed into the outer veil 2 hours later. Space here looked different, darker somehow, with fewer stars and strange radiation patterns that made the sensors flicker. They followed the path Taeyang's emergency beacon had traced before it vanished, a ghostly trail in their computer's memory. What they found instead of Taeyang was a fleet. Massive bioships hung in the void, organic vessels that looked grown rather than built. Each one bristled with weapons. Doyun's hands flew across the controls, throwing the ship into evasive maneuvers. They were too small to fight, too slow to run. "Incoming transmission," Kyung reported. "They're hailing us. Audio only. Put it through." Hana straightened her uniform, preparing to face whoever, or whatever, controlled these ships. The voice that came through was deep, translated by computers into something human ears could process. "Human vessel. You have entered Dracoth territory. State your purpose." "This is Captain Hana, of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm searching for my brother. His escape pod crashed in this region 6 weeks ago. We tracked his beacon here before it stopped transmitting." Silence on the other end. Then, "Describe this human." Hana pulled up Taeyang's file, transmitting his image. 17 years old. Black hair. 165 centimeters tall. He was aboard the colony ship times Sejong's Promise times when it was destroyed. His name is Taeyang. More silence. Hana's hands clenched at her sides. Finally, the voice spoke again. "The human you seek walks on Drakor Prime. He is alive. He is claimed. He is beyond your reach." "What does claimed mean?" Hana demanded. "Let me speak with him. Let me verify he's alive and safe. That is not your decision to make, human. Return to your space. Forget this search, or be destroyed." The transmission cut off. Hana stared at the silent speaker, her mind racing. Taeyang was alive. Alive. But prisoners of an unknown species that threatened to kill anyone who came looking for him. "Captain," Doyun said quietly, "we need to report this. The Coalition needs to know there's an advanced civilization out here, and they're holding one of our citizens. Hana nodded slowly. Set course for the nearest relay station. We're going to need backup. Quote, back on Drakor Prime, Taeyong worked in Vex Thar's private workshop, surrounded by holographic schematics and alien tools. 4 months had passed since his crash. His Dracoth language had improved enough that he barely needed the translator anymore. His body had adapted to the heavy gravity. He could walk without exhaustion now, even run short distances. He'd learned to read the weather patterns, to predict eruptions by the smell of the air. He'd also learned that rescue was coming. Velmora had told him about the human ship at the border, about his sister's voice demanding his return. The news had filled him with conflicting emotions, relief that Hana was alive, joy that she hadn't given up, but also something else, something he didn't want to examine too closely. A reluctance to leave. You are distracted today, Vex Thar observed. The warlord was teaching him Dracoth combat philosophy, using holographic simulations to demonstrate principles that had no direct translation to human language. I heard about the human ship, Taeyong admitted. My sister is out there looking for me. Vex Thar's tail curled. I know. The High Council debated whether to allow contact. They decided against it. Why? Because they fear what would happen if your people knew you lived. Would they demand your return? Would they send warships? Would they view your presence here as kidnapping or as an act of war? Vex Thar deactivated the simulation. The Council prefers to keep human space and Dracoth space separate. It is safer. Safer for who? Taeyong's frustration leaked into his voice. I'm not a secret to keep hidden. I'm a person. My sister deserves to know I'm alive. I agree. The admission surprised Taeyong. Vex Thar continued. But I am one voice among many. Rakthul and his faction control enough votes to block any contact with humans. They believe your species is a threat that should be contained, possibly eliminated. Taeyong went cold. Eliminated. They will not act without council approval, and they do not have enough support for genocide. Yet. Vex Thar's golden eyes met his. But fear makes people do terrible things. If they feel threatened enough, that could change. Before Taeyong could respond, alarms shrieked through the fortress. Different alarms than he'd heard before, sharper, more urgent. Vex Thar's head snapped up. He grabbed a communication device from his belt. Report, he barked. A voice crackled back in rapid Dracoth. Taeyong caught enough words to understand. Reaver, swarms. Multiple contacts. Heading toward Drakor Prime, Vex Thar's expression hardened into something terrible. Mobilize all defense forces. I want every ship in the air in 10 minutes. Protect the spawning grounds at all costs. He turned to Taeyong. Go to the shelter. Now. What's happening? The Reavers have returned. They're tracking something. Some energy signature. If I had to guess, the same anomaly that pulled your pod here. Vex Thar was already moving toward the door. Stay in the shelter until this is over. Taeyong followed him instead. Let me help. You cannot fight Reavers. You are human. You are soft. I'm also an engineer. I can monitor systems, coordinate communications, something. Taeyong grabbed Vex Thar's arm, a gesture that would have gotten anyone else killed. You claimed me. You said I was yours. That means I fight for what's mine too. And this place, these people, they're mine now too. Vex Thar stared at him for a long moment. Then he made a decision. Come. But stay close to me. If you die, I will be very disappointed. They ran together toward the command center. The fortress had transformed into organized chaos dragons, running to battle stations, weapons systems activating, ships launching from hidden bays. The command center itself was a huge room filled with holographic displays showing space above Drakor Prime. Red dots swarmed toward the moon, like locusts. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. At the same time, Another alert appeared on the long-range sensors. A small ship, human design, approaching from the opposite direction. The time's defiant light times had returned, with 6 other human vessels behind it. The humans. Rakthul snarled from his position at the tactical display. They violate our borders in our moment of crisis. I say, we destroy them now. They're not attacking, Taeyang said quickly, reading the display. They're on an intercept course. With the Reaver fleet. They're trying to help. Or they're scavengers hoping to profit from our battle. Taeyang looked at the screen showing his sister's ship. He could imagine her on that bridge, stubborn and fierce, refusing to abandon her search even with a hostile alien fleet and killer machines between her and her goal. An idea formed. Let me talk to them, he said. Let me coordinate. Humans and Dracoth fighting together could work. We have different technologies, different tactics. Combined, we might have a chance. Vexthar considered this for 3 seconds. Then he nodded. Open a channel to the human vessels. Taeyang will speak for us. Rakthul's roar of protest was drowned out by the activation of the communications array. A moment later, Hana's face appeared on the main screen. Her eyes widened. Taeyang? Her voice cracked. Oh God. You're alive. You're really alive. I'm alive, Hana. I'm okay. But we don't have time for a reunion right now. He gestured to the tactical display. Reaver. Swarms are attacking this position. Hundreds of ships. The Dracoth are preparing to defend, but they're outnumbered. Hana's expression shifted from relief to combat focus in an instant. That was his sister. Emotions could wait until after the battle. What do you need? Just 4. A coordinated attack. The Dracoth fight head-on, overwhelming force against force. But human ships are faster, more maneuverable. If you can use your stealth systems to infiltrate their formation while the Dracoth draw their attention, you might be able to target their command nodes. Stealth infiltration, while dragons breathe fire. I can work with that. Hana looked off-screen. Doyun? Start plotting approach vectors. Jiwon, prep the strike teams. Back to Taeyang. We'll need direct coordination with the Dracoth fleet. Taeyang looked at Vexthar. The warlord stepped into view of the camera. If Hana was intimidated by the massive dragon warrior, she didn't show it. Captain Hana, Vexthar said, your brother has proven himself worthy of protection. Help us defend this world, and I will owe you a debt. The Dracoth, do not forget debts. Just keep my brother safe, Hana replied. Everything else we can figure out later. Agreed. The battle began 20 minutes later. The Reaver swarms came like a wave of metal and death. Each ship was a patchwork of stolen technology, welded together by machine intelligence that didn't care about aesthetics, only function. They had no crews, no life support, no wasted space, just weapons and engines. The Dracoth bioships met them head-on. Plasma breath carved through Reaver formations. Lightning arced between vessels, overloading their systems. The dragons fought like the apex predators they were, fearless and ferocious. But the Reavers had numbers. For every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Dracoth line began to buckle. That's when the human ships struck. They came from below the engagement plane, stealth systems hiding them until they were inside the Reaver formation. Missiles and railgun fire targeted the command nodes Taeyang had identified. Communications between Reaver ships disrupted, their coordinated assault falling into chaos. Taeyang coordinated both forces from the command center, his fingers flying across alien controls while shouting instructions in 2 languages. Vexthar commanded the Dracoth fleet with tactical brilliance born from 10,000 years of warfare. Hana led the human strike with the desperate creativity that defined her species. Together, impossibly, they turned the tide. The Reaver swarms broke apart, scattered ships fleeing into deep space. The defense of Drakor Prime held. In the command center, Taeyang sagged against the console, exhausted beyond measure. Vex Thar placed a massive hand on his shoulder, a gesture of pride. You were right, the warlord said. Together, we are stronger. On the main screen, Hana's face showed exhaustion equal to his own. Taeyang. I'm coming down there. We need to talk. Face to face. Yeah. Taeyang agreed, smiling despite everything. We really do. Rakthul watched this exchange with cold eyes. The human had proven useful, yes. But he had also proven dangerous. He'd shown that humans and Dracoth could work together, could bridge the gap between species. For someone who believed in Dracoth's supremacy, this was the worst possible outcome. The counselor began making plans. This alliance had to be broken before it could truly begin. Part 4. Convergence of Storms. The landing pad was carved from black stone at the base of Vex Thar's fortress. Taeyang stood there with Velmora beside him, watching the human shuttle descend through the crimson sky, his heart hammered in his chest. 5 months since he'd seen another human. 5 months since he'd hugged his sister. The shuttle touched down with a hiss of engines. The door opened, and Hana stepped out in her captain's uniform, flanked by Doyun and Jiwon with weapons ready. Her eyes found Taeyang immediately. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Hana broke into a run. They collided in a hug that nearly knocked Taeyang over. Hana was taller, stronger, but she held him like he might disappear if she let go. You stupid, stupid kid, she whispered fiercely. I thought you were dead. I'm okay. I'm safe. Taeyang hugged her back just as hard. I'm sorry you had to search so long. When they finally pulled apart, Hana looked him over carefully. You've changed. Taller. Stronger. What have they been feeding you? Mostly stuff that tastes like metal and regret, Taeyang joked. Then he turned to Velmora. Hana, this is Velmora. She taught me the Dracoth language and culture. She's been a good friend. Velmora inclined her head respectfully. Your brother has brought honor to your bloodline, Captain. He saved hatchlings during an eruption. He stood before the High Council and proved human worth. He coordinated the defense against the Reavers when many would have fled. Hana's expression softened slightly. Thank you for taking care of him. Heavy footsteps announced Vex Thar's arrival. The warlord descended from the fortress, his silver scales catching the red light. He was even more impressive in person than on a view screen. Hana's hand instinctively moved toward her sidearm before she forced it to relax. Captain Hana, Vex Thar rumbled. Welcome to Drakor Prime. Your brother speaks highly of you, Warlord Vex Thar. Hana's voice was controlled, professional. Thank you for keeping Taeyang alive. I'd like to discuss his return to human space. Of course. But first, there are matters we must address. Come. We will speak in comfort. They followed Vex Thar into the fortress. Doyun and Jiwon's eyes went wide as they took in the massive architecture. The dragon warriors standing guard. The lava channels providing heat and light. It was like walking into a myth made real. The meeting room had a table built for dragons, with smaller seats hastily added for the humans. A human ambassador had arrived as well. Mirai, sent by the Terran Coalition to establish formal contact. She was older than Hana, experienced in first contact protocols, clearly uncomfortable, but determined. Let me be direct, Mirai began once everyone was seated. The Terran Coalition is grateful for the cooperation during the Reaver attack. However, we need to discuss the unauthorized detainment of a human citizen on your sacred world. Rakthul, who had insisted on attending, leaned forward. The human trespassed on holy ground. Our law demanded his death. Warlord Vex Thar's claiming was an act of mercy, not kidnapping. Mercy that prevented him from leaving, Hana said coldly. That prevented him from contacting his family. That looks a lot like imprisonment from our perspective. Your perspective is limited, Rakthul shot back. You are a young species with no understanding of sacred tradition. The argument escalated quickly. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Taeyang watched it spiral, feeling helpless. This was exactly what he'd feared. the two sides unable to see past their differences. Then the alarms shrieked again. Everyone froze. Vexthar's expression darkened. How many? Scans show 500 vessels. Maybe more. They're converging on Draker Prime. From multiple vectors. The room erupted into chaos. Rakthul roared about attacking the humans for bringing this curse. Mireille demanded her ship be allowed to evacuate. Hana was already on her communicator, coordinating with her fleet. Taeyang stood up. Stop! His voice, smaller and weaker than any in the room, somehow cut through the noise. Everyone looked at him. Fighting each other won't help. The Reavers are tracking something here. Some energy source. We need to figure out what they want and defend against it together. The human is right, Vexthar said. Velmora. Access the deep geological scans. Find what draws them here. While Velmora worked, Kyung approached with his portable scanner. Captain, I'm detecting strange radiation patterns from deep underground. Very old. Very powerful. It's like nothing in our databases. Velmora's holographic display showed similar findings. There is something beneath the spawning grounds. Ancient. We always attributed it to natural geological processes, but these readings suggest technology. Very advanced technology. The progenitors. Rakthul whispered. The old stories speak of the first ones, who seeded life across the stars. We thought them myths. Myths or not, the Reavers want whatever is down there, Hana said. And they have the numbers to take it. Vexthar looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Reaver fleet. Then he looked at Hana and her crew. Then at Taeyang. Captain, how many ships do you have? 7 total. Small, fast, but not built for sustained combat. We have 50 war vessels, powerful, but slow to maneuver. Vexthar's claws tapped the table. The Reavers will try to land forces to excavate the source. We must prevent that while destroying their fleet. We need a better plan than try harder than last time, Doyun said. They outnumber us 10 to 1. Taeyang studied the tactical display, his mind racing. What if we don't try to fight all 500 ships? What if we cut off their coordination? He pointed to specific vessels. The Reavers operate as a network. They have command nodes that direct the swarm. If we take those out with EMP strikes, the rest will lose cohesion, Jiwan nodded slowly. Human ships plant the EMPs, while Draketh forces provide cover. It could work. It's risky, Mireille pointed out. We'd be sending our ships deep into their formation. We are already at risk, Vexthar said. This moon is sacred to my people. We will not allow machines to desecrate it. The question is whether you will stand with us. Hana looked at her brother. Taeyang met her eyes and nodded slightly. She turned back to Vexthar. We'll stand with you. But after this is over, we're having a serious talk about galactic law and citizen rights. Agreed, Vexthar said. Then, to everyone's surprise, he extended his hand to Hana in a human gesture of agreement. She shook it, her hand disappearing in his massive claws. The preparation was frantic. Kyung and Draketh engineers worked together to build EMP devices powerful enough to take down the command nodes. Jiwan trained with Draketh warriors, learning their tactics and teaching human combat techniques. Doyun studied the bioship flight patterns, figuring out how to coordinate with pilots who flew by instinct rather than instruments. Taeyang found himself in the center of it all, translating not just words but concepts, helping 2 vastly different species understand each other. He worked without sleep, fueled by adrenaline and the terrible knowledge that failure meant death for everyone he cared about. Hana pulled him aside during a brief rest period. You've changed, she said quietly. You're not the kid who left Earth anymore. A lot has happened. Taeyang admitted. I've learned things. Seen things. These people, the Draketh, they're not monsters. They're just different. I can see that. Hana looked toward where Vexthar was coordinating with his commanders. He cares about you. The big silver one. It's obvious in how he watches you. He lost his son. I think I remind him of what he had. And what are you to him? Really? Taeyang considered the question. Family. I think. Not the family I was born with, but the family I found. Does that make sense? Hana hugged him again. Yeah, little brother. It makes sense. The Reaver fleet arrived like a storm of metal. 500 ships, each one bristling with weapons and salvage technology. They moved with eerie coordination, adjusting course simultaneously, targeting solutions, updating in real time, across the swarm. The Galactic War fleet rose to meet them, bioships roaring defiance through the void. Vex's Thar commanded from his flagship, the Times Skyrender Asterisk, with Taeyang at his side coordinating with the human forces. Hana led the human infiltration team personally. 7 small ships against 500. The odds were insane. But humanity had never let impossible odds stop them before. The battle began with fury. Draketh ships unleashed plasma torrents that melted Reaver hulls. The machines responded with overwhelming firepower, their networked targeting eliminating anything that stayed still too long. Space filled with debris and fire. The human ships darted through the chaos, too small and fast for the Reavers to track effectively. They reached the first command node, and Kyung's EMP device activated, sending electromagnetic pulses through the enemy formation. 30 Reaver ships went dark, drifting without guidance. First node down, Hana's voice crackled through the communicator. Moving to target 2, but the Reavers adapted. They shifted tactics, creating defensive shells around their remaining command nodes. One of the human ships, the Times Courageous Asterisk, took heavy fire. Taeyang watched in horror as it exploded, taking its crew of 12 with it. Doyun, pull back, Hana ordered. Negative, Captain. I have a shot at Node 3. Doyun's ship, the Times Skydancer Asterisk, dove toward a heavily defended Reaver command ship. Missiles and railgun fire filled the space around him. His shields failed, his hull breached. But he kept going, manually piloting even as his systems failed. Doyun, eject. That's an order. Tell my mom I'm sorry I didn't call more. Doyun's voice was calm. Fire in the hole. The Times, Skydancer Times, rammed the Reaver command node with its EMP device primed. The explosion took out 50 Reaver ships in a cascade of electromagnetic death. And one human hero. The silence on the comm channel was deafening. Then Hana's voice, tight with grief and fury. All ships. For Doyun. Make it count. The battle raged for 6 hours. Velmora fought on the front lines. Her ship's bioweapons tearing through Reaver formations. Jiwon led boarding teams onto Reaver ships, planting explosives and fighting machine defenders in close quarters. The Draketh and humans bled together, died together, won together. When the last Reaver ship fell, when silence finally returned to space above Dracor Prime, both fleets were battered and exhausted. They'd lost 30% of the Draketh war fleet, 3 of 7 human ships, hundreds of lives, but they'd won. The sacred moon stood intact. The ancient power source remained undisturbed. 2 species had stood together against annihilation and survived. In the Times Skyrender Asterisk's command center, Taeyang collapsed into a seat, his body shaking with exhaustion and delayed fear. Vexthar stood nearby, blood from minor wounds staining his silver scales, but his eyes bright with something like pride. Your people fought well, the warlord said, especially the one called Doyun. His sacrifice will be remembered in Draketh history. He deserves that, Taeyang whispered. He deserves so much more. On the view screen, Hana's face appeared. She looked as exhausted as Taeyang felt. Warlord, we need to talk. About everything. About Taeyang. About this alliance. About what happens next. Yes, Vexthar agreed. Come to the fortress. We will speak of the future. Part Sync. Mine now, ours forever. The memorial ceremony took place 3 days after the battle. Dragons and humans stood together on the Blackstone Plaza, outside Vexthar's fortress, watching as holographic images of the fallen appeared in the air. Each face stayed visible for 30 seconds, while their name and deeds were read aloud in both languages. When Doyun's face appeared, Hana stepped forward. Her voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Pilot Doyun. Friend. Brother in arms. He gave everything so that others could live. In the stories we tell, in the stars we name, in the ships we fly, he will not be forgotten. Vexthar spoke next, his deep voice carrying across the plaza. By Drakith law, any warrior who sacrifices themselves defending our sacred ground is granted eternal honor. Doyun's name will be carved into the wall of heroes, alongside the greatest of our kind. His spirit flies with ours. Taeyang watched from beside Velmora as two species mourned together. The Drakith believed death in battle was glorious, a warrior's true purpose. Humans believed sacrifice for others was the highest form of love. Different philosophies that somehow arrived at the same conclusion. These deaths mattered. After the ceremony, the real work began. Ambassador Mireille had brought a team of diplomats from the Terran coalition. The Drakith High Council assembled in full, even the members who had argued against any human contact. Rakthul attended, though his expression showed he'd rather be anywhere else. The negotiations happened in the fortress's largest chamber. A table had been specially built, sized for both species. Translators worked constantly, turning Drakith rumbles into human words, and vice versa. The Terran coalition proposes a formal alliance, Mireille began. Technology exchange, mutual defense, and open borders for peaceful travel and trade. A Drakith counselor named Shavara responded. Our people have been isolated for centuries. You ask us to change everything we are. No, Taeyang said, surprising himself by speaking up. Everyone looked at him. We're not asking you to change who you are. We're asking you to grow. There's a difference. Rakthul's laugh was harsh. The pet human speaks. Tell me, boy. Why should we trust your kind? You've been in space for barely 300 years. Your children playing with fire. Maybe, Taeyang agreed. But children learn fast, and sometimes the old ways need new perspectives. He stood up, moving to the holographic star map at the center of the table. The Reavers came here twice now. They're not going to stop. You've fought them for decades and they keep coming back stronger. Why? Because they adapt faster than you do. They learn from every battle. He manipulated the star map, showing Reaver territory spreading like a cancer across multiple sectors. Humans adapt too. We have to. We don't have the luxury of being strong by nature. But that means we're really good at figuring things out, at solving problems in new ways. You saw it in the battle. Human stealth tech plus Drakith firepower. Together, we won. Separately, we would have lost. Vexthar's tail curled in agreement. The human speaks truth. I have watched him for 5 months. I have seen how his mind works, how his people think. They find solutions where we see only problems. This is not weakness. This is strength of a different kind. And what about the sacred laws? Rakthul challenged. This human violated our most holy place. Others died for lesser offenses. Yet he walks free, claims friendship with our warlord, speaks in our councils. Where does it end? Will we let humans walk anywhere? Will we abandon all tradition? The chamber erupted in argument. Counselors shouted in Drakith while human diplomats tried to interject. The whole thing was falling apart. Hana stood up. Her voice cut through the chaos. Enough. She waited until everyone was quiet. I want my brother back. I want him to come home. But I'm not stupid. I know what I'm seeing here. She looked at Taeyang. He's not the same person who left Earth. He's grown, learned, found something important here. Found he's not the same. Lord, she turned to Vex's Thar. You claimed him because you lost your son. I get that. I understand loss. But Taeyang isn't your son. He's his own person. So here's my question. If he chose to stay here, to split his time between our worlds, would you let him? Or is this claiming just another word for ownership? The silence that followed was heavy. Vexathar looked at Taeyang for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was softer than anyone had heard before. When I first saw him, broken and lost in the red dust, I saw Kirsan. I saw a chance to protect again, to teach again, to matter again. The warlord's claws opened and closed, but he is not Kirsan. He is Taeyang. He is stubborn and clever and brave in ways my son never was. I claimed him to save his life. I kept him because he made me remember what it means to build, rather than just destroy. Vexthar stood, his full height impressive even among other dragons. I release the claim. Taeyang is free to choose his path. If he wishes to return to human space, I will not stop him. If he wishes to stay, he is welcome. The choice is his, as it should have been from the beginning. Everyone looked at Taeyang. He felt the weight of both species' expectations. Go home to Earth, to familiar people and familiar places, or stay in this strange world of dragons and volcanic skies, where he'd found an unexpected family. I don't want to choose, Taeyang said slowly. Why can't it be both? 6 months here, learning from Vexthar and the Dracoth. 6 months traveling between human and Dracoth space as an ambassador, helping both sides understand each other. I'm probably the only person in the galaxy who speaks both languages fluently. That should mean something. Mireille nodded thoughtfully. A cultural liaison. Someone who belongs to both worlds. The coalition would support that. Shavara considered this. It is unusual, but these are unusual times. I could accept this arrangement. Even Rakthul grudgingly agreed, though he added, the human will be watched. Any violation of law, any betrayal, and this arrangement ends. Fair enough, Taeyang said. I can work with that. The Covenant of Shared Skies was signed 3 weeks later. A formal treaty between the Terran Coalition and the Dracoth Empire. The first of its kind. Technology exchange programs were established. A small human embassy was built on the edge of Drakor Prime's main settlement. The first non-Dracoth structure ever permitted on the Sacred Moon. Kyung and a team of Dracoth engineers began work on hybrid ship designs that combined human innovation with Dracoth biological engineering. The results were impressive, faster, stronger, more efficient than anything either species had built alone. Velmora volunteered to be Taeyang's permanent liaison. She would travel with him between worlds, helping facilitate communication and understanding. Taeyang suspected she also just wanted to see new places. Dragons might be old and powerful, but they could still get curious. Jiwon stayed behind to help establish the first joint military academy. Young humans and young dragons would train together, learning each other's tactics and techniques. The first class had 60 students, 30 of each species. Hana took command of the first joint patrol fleet, 3 human ships, and 3 Dracoth bioships, working together to secure the border regions and hunt down remaining Reaver forces. It was challenging, frustrating, and exactly the kind of impossible task she loved. 5 years passed. Taeyang grew from a lost teenager into a confident young man, who moved easily between 2 worlds. He spoke at the Galactic Assembly, representing both humanity and the Dracoth Empire. Other species watched in fascination as the youngest spacefaring race, and one of the oldest, formed an alliance that was changing the political landscape of known space. On the anniversary of the first battle, Taeyang stood in Vexthar's private quarters. The old warlord had slowed down a bit, spent more time teaching and less time fighting. But his mind was still sharp, his wisdom deeper than ever. I have something for you, Vexthar said. He held out a piece of metal worked into an intricate design, the symbol of his family line. In Drakith culture, this is given to those we consider true family. Not by blood, but by choice. You were mine when I claimed you. But now you are mine, because we both choose it. There is a difference. Taeyang took the medallion carefully. It was warm from Vexthar's hand, heavier than it looked. Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For teaching me. For letting me go, and letting me come back. Thank your sister, Vexthar said. She reminded me that love is not possession. Family is not ownership. You belong to yourself first, and that is how it should be. They stood together looking out the window at the red landscape. A human shuttle was landing at the embassy. Drakith younglings played in the courtyard below. Their games now, including human children visiting with diplomatic families. Do you ever regret it? Taeyang asked. Opening your world to humans? Changing everything? Vexthar's laugh rumbled. Every day I see something that makes me think, the old ways were simpler. But simpler is not better. Look there. He pointed to the courtyard. Human and Drakith children playing together. 5 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. Now it is normal. That is worth any discomfort. A communication alert sounded. Velmora's face appeared on the holographic display. Taeyang, we have a situation. Long-range sensors detected a signal from deep space. Unknown origin. The language is neither human nor Drakith. The assembly is requesting your presence. Taeyang and Vexthar exchanged a look. A new mystery. A new challenge. Maybe a new species to meet and understand. Prepare my ship, Taeyang said. And contact Hana's fleet. If we're doing this, we do it together. Vexthar placed his massive hand on Taeyang's shoulder, a gesture that had come to mean pride, affection, and trust. You were lost, and I found you. You were claimed, and I freed you. You were mine, and you remain mine. But now, you are also yours. Go face whatever comes next. Know that your family stands behind you. Both of them. If you were mine, Arwell. 2-3. About. Both of them. Taeyang smiled. Both of them. I like the sound of that. 3 months later, the joint human-Drakith exploration fleet approached the source of the mysterious signal. It came from a derelict station, ancient beyond measure, covered in symbols that resembled both human and Drakith writing, but predated both species. Standing on the bridge of the flagship, Taeyang looked at the assembled crew. Humans and dragons working side by side. Hana commanded the military wing. Vexathar advised on tactics. Velmora led the science team. Kyung and Drakith engineers stood ready to explore the station. Whatever we find in there, Taeyang said, we face it together. Not as separate species, but as partners. As allies. He paused, then smiled. As family. The exploration team deployed. Taeyang went with them, of course. He was never one to stay behind when there were mysteries to solve and bridges to build. As they approached the ancient station, he thought about how far he'd come. A lost boy who crashed on a forbidden world, claimed by a dragon warlord who saw in him a memory of loss. But that loss had become something new, something better. The station doors opened before them, revealing wonders and dangers unknown. Taeyang stepped forward without fear. Whatever waited in the dark, he wouldn't face it alone. He had a dragon warlord who called him family, a sister who crossed the stars to find him, friends from 2 species who trusted him with their lives, the youngest spacefaring race and one of the oldest, standing together. Vexathar had claimed him with the words, "Mine now." But those words had evolved, had grown into something bigger. Not possession, but partnership. Not ownership, but belonging. Mine now had become ours forever. And in that forever, anything was possible. The stars waited. The universe was vast. And humanity, alongside their dragon allies, was ready to explore it all. Asterisk, asterisk. The end. Asterisk, asterisk.